We're here at 1:02, so I think we can go ahead and start going. I'll just repeat again one time for those of you who have joined us since 1 o'clock. There's a question and answer button there that you can click at any time. Only the panelists, myself and Jayden, can see them. We'll be sure to answer those questions in real time throughout the presentation. If you also want to give us a little information about yourselves, you can say kind of where you are, what kind of practice you are, or something you're interested in learning today to make sure that we make your time valuable here when you're getting the most out of this presentation. Today, we're talking about money, what to do with it, how to make more of it, how to protect it. First, Jayden's going to kind of dive into the financial aspect and all sorts of great things here in terms of mistakes that might be made, the right way to do things, and then I will offer some guidance on how do you best manage your money when it comes to a digital agency or digital marketing or marketing in general. What are common mistakes that you might see people make and how to best align yourself for success in that way. So from that, I'm going to let Jayden introduce himself and then take it from here for his portion.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jayden Doye. I'm known as the Law Firm CPA. I own Prestige Accounting and Consulting, where we help law firm owners reach new heights and catch more flights. Today, I am very excited to talk to you about the biggest financial mistakes that law firm owners make, because I see it oh so often. And it's because college doesn't prepare you for it, law school doesn't prepare you for it. A lot of people are just learning the hard way and learning by trial and error. So I hope to provide you with some guidance today on how to better manage your money for your firm as you are growing and scaling. Everything I'm talking about today is in one of my best-selling books called Eat Dessert First. The thought process behind this is that reality is most law firm owners are paying themselves last. They're profiting last. They're taking profit distributions last. And we really want to change I really want to change the mindset and thought process behind how you manage money in your firm so that you're feeding yourself, so that you're full, so that you can have the energy to feed everyone else. And usually the problem is not revenue at its core, it's the structure. So everything goes into one big account. And from there, then you pay your expenses, and then you decide whatever's left, that's your profit. And that's what we can pay ourselves as the owner with. Essentially, it's like a big pot of gumbo. Gumbo has shrimp, sausage, various different things in gumbo, and it's a big mix. And essentially, when you have just one bank account, other than your IOTA account, for your business, you're mixing everything together. You don't have clarity, you don't have control, and you don't have a profit strategy. And so what we want to do is, instead of putting everything into this pot and pouring a bowl for everyone else, what we want to do is not hope and pray for profit, but actually design for profit. So when you are doing your budget, you should be planning for what your ideal profit margin is. Right now, the way it stands, when people, if they even do budgeting and projections, the profit is the last item on that list. But I'm telling you here today, I want you to start with the profit in mind. So if your ideal profit is $100,000 for the month or the quarter, make sure you put that first and then work backwards from there. And so essentially what this does is it holds you and your team accountable so that you can get the results that you want. In addition to that, what I want you to do is, from every dollar you earn, I want you to put a percentage of that money into a savings account, specifically for profit. And we will get into the food groups in a moment as we talk about the different bank accounts I want you to have so that you can have more clarity and control and not just eating gumbo. So what I want you to do is create a savings account and call that your dessert account. Now, how many times have you went to a conference or some type of large event, a gala, and you get to this gala and you see that cheesecake on the table, and that cheesecake looks so good, but you've been told it's been rude to eat your dessert first. So what do? You sit there and you sit through the lecture and you're fighting falling asleep. And then the food finally comes. And what happens? They give you a dry piece of chicken that's drier than the Sahara Desert and some vegetables that don't even have a grain of salt or pepper in it. So this whole time, you have been sitting here being patient, being the good person that everyone told you that you should be. Instead of eating that dessert, you're now 10 times more mad because you waited for this meal that ends up being trash. And now you're starving and you're hungry and you're tired. It's not a good look. Okay. So that is why I want you to eat dessert first, both physically and and mentally. Okay. So from every dollar that you earn, you are going to put 5% into that dessert account before you spend any of it. That dessert account is for you to treat yourself. Okay. Then I want you to put 10% into a carb account. I don't know about you all, but carbs tend to bloat me. So I need less carbs than protein. I know I need carbs, but I don't need as much as I do with proteins or vegetables. So your carb account, you want to put about 10%. This will fluctuate depending on the financial health of your business. Then you have your vegetable account, okay? This is where we make sure that we set money aside for you as the owner of the business to benefit from, okay? And then last but not least, everything else will go into the new account. This is your operating expense account. This is where everything else goes, okay? So you have your income account, that's where everything comes into, and then you split that money up between these different accounts. This gives you clarity, this gives you control, and this gives you the peace of mind that you know where all your money is. And it forces you to treat yourself, which everyone tells you you shouldn't do, but I'm giving you permission today to do it. This will also make it so that you know you will be working with less money because too often when people make financial decisions, they look at the bank account and say, hey, yeah, I got it in the bank account so I can spend it. But when you use this model, you're now looking at, okay, I actually have less than I'm used to. Let me change my thought process on how I'm spending money and not looking at things as an expense and looking at them as an investment. How much of a return on investment am I getting from my employees? How much of a return on investment am I getting from my marketing? How much of a return on investment am I getting from my technology? And so now you're more likely to make data-driven decisions and less likely to just go with the flow. And this will also promote for you to hold yourself accountable. Because if you're not making enough money to pay your expenses, that will persuade you to say, okay, let me look at all these leads that I got. Let me go ahead and call some of these people. Let me go ahead and get some people on my calendar. Let me reach back out to those leads that said that they were ready to move forward but didn't pay. Let me do that. And this will get you more in tune with your marketing. This will get you more in tune with looking at the numbers and seeing what from your marketing is working and what's not working. If you're putting a lot of money into Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, all of these platforms as far as ads, and you see that one platform is not giving you any qualified leads, then that may be the time to adjust that budget. Okay. Now, currently, as it stands, a lot of law firm owners, they pay the staff first and they pay the bills first, and you get what's left. And I want you to change that thought process. I want you to be okay with eating dessert first, feeding yourself first, because you deserve it. And as you think about the financial health of your business, I want you to do a quick reality check and answer honestly to yourself. If your firm made $1 million, how much of that would go to you? And does it fit with my eating dessert first model? Does your percentage of how much went to you actually match my model? If not, then it might be time for a change. And you can scan the QR code to get a copy of my book, or if you want to book a consultation with me and talk more about how we can help your firm grow and scale with better financial systems, you can scan the bottom QR code. And now we will go into a poll, correct?
Yes, sir. All right, so I'm
Great.
gonna put that poll live, and then we'll dive into kind of drawing on what Jane's talked about. How do you manage your money in different buckets? The one that I can help with today is that marketing side of things and how to make sure you're not over investing or under investing where it doesn't even make a difference. So give me a second. We're going to get this poll nice and live. Okay, launching right now. You should see a question. It's both questions actually that have come up right now. So if you'll take a minute to answer. And then I will switch. So I'll start sharing my screen while we're waiting right here.
Okay.
Okay, let's make sure it's the right screen. And we'll just let you. Perfect. All right.
It says I'm still screen sharing. I'll stop and then
Yep.
you should take.
And then tell me if you're seeing mine. I'm seeing that it's
Okay,
showing.
yes, I can see yours now.
Perfect. All right, we're going to end the poll real quick. Um, and download. Okay, perfect. So from my perspective, we were going to talk about, like I said, what are some of those mistakes that I see often that law firms across the country are making, whether they are one solo lawyer, five lawyers, 20 lawyers, whatever it may be. There's certain things that you should be looking for when you are trying to figure out how much should I spend, when should I spend it, how am I tracking that that spending is actually making a difference, right? So I boil these down to these three common issues that I see often, and we're going to take them one at a time here. So improper investment is one of the biggest issues. The second is the improper expectations, whether that is the law firm is expecting results really quickly or it hasn't been discussed. The expectations haven't been laid out. Maybe this is the first time that you're getting involved in marketing, right? And you're like, well, I don't know what I don't know and what I should expect. And so, what does that look like? And then the last one is the improper reporting and tracking. So, essentially, you've decided to spend the money, you've got your expectations aligned. However, we're not tracking properly. We don't know what's working, what's not working. Where should I invest more? Where should I not? Where should I remove some budget, right? So, I'm kind of going to take you through these, like I said, and then also offer what should it look like? What should the correct way be, right? And don't do it if it's not a right fit. Sometimes digital isn't the right fit for every firm. So let's start with improper investment and budget. And the important piece to talk about here is that it's not just under investing, right? It's not just having not enough budget, but there are absolutely times where I see that people are over investing and that that can be an issue for law firms for long-term relationships with an SEO agency or with a good strategy to continue to grow. So with the under investing, pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes it's, if it's not enough to actually move the needle with SEO, sometimes that can mean that nothing good will come of it, right? If you have a brand new website, you're just starting out and your competitors in your market are very competitive. They're doing 10 pages of content every month on their site, and you're only going to spend enough to do 2 pages of content on your site. Quite frankly, it's just not going to catch up and it's not going to work. So what you're doing is you're taking that money that you're spending for those 2 pages of content every month and the very basic items, and you're essentially putting that in a dumpster fire. Unless, of course, you know that you're only building a little bit right now because maybe it is your first year in business. You want to have something going with your website, but you very much know, okay, this is not going to make me dominate my competition. This is not going to make me win. I'm not going to get anything back from my investment right now, other than this is foundation building so that when I am ready in a year to dive in, I have at least a foundation, right? So you're building something, but not building something to rank to have results in that capacity. So I always say if you're being told that a small amount of money is going to make you win in a big market, and that just seems like a sales pitch, it probably is. And I would verify with someone that you trust, right? Another lawyer, maybe another SEO agency, just to kind of get ideas of if this one's saying you need this much and this one's saying you need an eighth of that, there's probably something wrong and the truth is somewhere in between. So making sure that if it's not going to work, don't do it. Find another more fitting marketing bucket. Maybe you can put money into referral building, taking people out golfing, drinks, whatever it might be for face to face to get referrals. Might be a better use of that money instead of it not working at a long term with digital. If you're doing a slow build, kind of like I mentioned, it's absolutely possible that in that same example that I gave, okay, the competitors are doing 10 pages of content a month. I don't have the budget right now to do 10 or 11 pages to keep up exact, but I maybe can do 5 to 8 pages of content every month. That's significant. You could be doing that and you would call that a slow build. But the idea here is if you're going to budget that money for the slow build, you have to understand that the expectation is, again, you're not going to dominate the market, right? You are going to see some results, but it's going to take longer to see those results because you're not doing exactly what you need to do in that market and you won't get as much ROI. So the expectations here need to just be kind of tailored to the fact that you're doing a slow build. When you're doing a slow build, the expectation should always be that you eventually want to move into a larger spend and to actually do what is needed for that market. When you're only spending a little bit and doing foundational at first, it's not because you're going to do foundational forever. So that is another thing to consider before saying yes, right, to an agency. Over investing. This can be an issue because that's where you start cutting into your ROI. So what's happens sometimes, let's say you're over investing just a little bit too much, not doubling your over investment, right? If there's minimal over investment, then you're just going to see lower return on investment. If you were paying the right amount that you should for what the results will be, then you would be obviously getting a little bit more bang for your buck. If you are heavily over investing, meaning that you are being charged twice as much as you should actually be paying for that service, right? That service can be done properly at a lower rate, let's say, then you could actually get to the point where you don't see any ROI, even though the results are good. So if your market, let's say, is a medium market and you should expect 10 to 15 cases signed per month at maximum out of that market, and you are getting 10 to 15 cases signed, right? But you're not seeing ROI, return on investment, that you're breaking even, that's a sad situation because you are getting really good results, but you're not seeing the ROI because your spend is so high. So that is where it's really important to make sure that you are finding that balance. So then the question is, well, how do I determine the right amount of investment, right? The proper amount of investment. And the general rule of thumb that we use and historically have used was 20% of your revenue that you bring in will help make sure that you're seeing growth year over year. The 20%, though, is going to get you just a regular rate of growth. If you are a firm that is in a super growth mode, that you are actively trying to make sure that you're maybe doubling your revenue from like 1 mil to three, or you want to go from 3 to 10 instead of just 3 to 5, then you're going to need to spend more to make more, right? You're going to need more visibility. And that's not just digital marketing, but that's spending across all different types of marketing channels. But I see firms spending as high as 45% of their revenue in order to really see growth, that higher growth, right? So kind of common sense, the more that you put back into your business, the more it's going to grow. But at minimum, you want to be thinking that 20% to see real growth. the salespeople that you're talking to, the agencies that you're talking to, the contractors, the coaches, whoever is advising you, they should really be helping you identify that proper investment. They should know just from their expertise how to determine
Nalini, I think your
what you
mic
should
went
spend.
out.
Can you hear me?
Oh no, maybe it's me, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So you can still hear me. And then if somebody else can also just let me know if you can't hear me, just go ahead and put that in the question and answers area or the chat. Um, the where I was saying that the salesperson or whoever is advising you should be able to help you. And the way that you can determine how much you should spend is by analyzing the market. So your particular market is going to be a different amount of need than somebody else's market. For example, if you're in a small town in Oklahoma, you'll have less competitors and less firms. And so you'll have to do less work, right? So you need less resources. If you're in LA or Miami, got a lot of law firms that are competitors with you, and you have to do a lot more. So it is very specifically to your market. Don't let someone just say, oh, blanket a cost, this is how much it would be. Someone who has run this analysis a lot of times can give you a general range if you're in a low competition, medium competition, high competition market. But at the end of the day, you want to see something that shows here are your actual competitors, here's what they're doing, here's what they're probably spending, and here's what you need to do to outdo them. If you're not spending what is needed to outdo the competition, then you're not spending the proper budget in your market to see real results and to dominate, right? So that's pretty simple, but it really does come down to asking the right questions and kind of demanding to see how they're coming up with that cost. Why are they saying it's that much? But a proper sales cycle or coach will do that for you, right?
Can I
So
add
this,
something to that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So before I forget, as it pertains to over investing, a lot of times um, people will say, I'm not getting an ROI, I'm not getting ROI. And I say, okay, let me see your sales system, right? Let me see the leads. And then I look at the leads and I see a bunch of leads that have not been worked. You're getting the lead. They're just not, you have a conversion problem, not a marketing problem. So I think it's important for when people feel like they may be overspending to really think sometimes when you think you have a marketing problem, you actually either have a conversion or a sales problem. And like you said about underinvesting, I don't know why companies do it, but for some reason people will be like, oh, all you need to do is do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and then they end up paying like 2,000 a month, and it doesn't push the needle at all. So, and what happens is that law firms don't understand that you're about to go into talking about the long play. There's a difference between
Yep.
marketing and branding and lead generation. And so if you want leads, if you actually want ready to buy clients, then you need to make that clear when you are talking to a marketing agency because that strategy looks different than the long thing.
Absolutely. 100%. Um, I couldn't have said that better. So that, thank you for adding that in. Agree 100%. And then as we get into that kind of bigger picture too, there's the expectations, right? And this is where you're kind of talking about. So you also need to know what you want to get out of this. What's your end goal, right? Because if you can hop on a call and you can tell the salesperson or the coach or whoever's advising you again, this is what I want out of it. I want this many cases, or I expect to grow this amount of money in my revenue. You can reverse engineer to say, okay, well, then this is what you need to do if that's your goal, right? Without coming in with clear goals, it's pretty difficult to meet expectations. Now, let's say you don't know what your goal should be again, because you're like, I don't know what I don't know. So then here you'll say, all right, well, tell me what your average client is doing or what looking at myself, what should I get out of this, right? There are things that a company can help you with and they can talk about with, especially with respect to how long things take. So digital marketing naturally is always going to take a while. It's going to take a long time. It's not your set it and all of a sudden you get these calls and these cases signed. That would be paid ads more if you wanted something more instantaneous. But when we're talking about organic, which would be ranking on Google, ranking on AI search platforms, all that fun stuff, You're thinking that it's going to be based on, again, competitors. If you're in a smaller market, there's not a lot of competition, then you could see some initial increases and results in 2 to 4 months, right? But we'll also talk about what that means. That doesn't mean all of a sudden you're getting all the calls and you're getting a ton of cases signed. This is just an initial bump that you're seeing that it's working, that if you spend more time and energy on this, you will see that it'll continue to grow incrementally, right? With a medium market, the expectation is about 4 to 6 months to see that initial bump. Competitive markets can be half a year to a year. And then those major markets, those can take a year to 2 years to really see even an initial bump because it is so competitive. It also depends on what you bring to the table. If you end up being in a major market, but you've done SEO for 5 years, you've done it for a while, and you have quite a good build out, then of course it won't take 12 to 24 months, right? It's just the amount of time that it will take to catch up to the competitors. So these timeframes that you see here generally are if you're starting from scratch in that type of market, right? But again, that's where when you're being advised, they should show your numbers, your KPIs versus your competitors and show you that gap of how much you actually need to catch up to, and then set an expectation for this is how long we think it'll take till you actually get some results. So it's important. I always call out that you should always have some other type of pipeline form of business line that is going to keep the lights on until your digital hits, right? Which could take a year of spending before you see those cases signed. Now, one thing that would be a very good question to ask here is, well, I know that SEO historically has taken a long time. You got to do a lot of work for Google to understand you're the right answer and for you to rank. Well, what about AI now? Is it a lot easier, faster to rank for AI? Do these timelines change? We're doing a lot of test and measuring over the past 2 to 3 years with AI search. What we're finding is that you have to have that foundational SEO build out in order to even be looked at from an AI platform's perspective because your technical, your website has to be in line. Your I's have to be dotted, your T's have to be crossed. Now, once you have a build out, there are a handful of items that optimize for you to rank on ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, right? And in doing those items, those bots can crawl it a lot faster, is what we're seeing. So it is true that maybe you can rank on those AI platforms faster, but at the end of the day, you have to have that foundation built, right? So the SEO piece of it still matters, and you still have to keep up with the Joneses. So if some folks are optimizing for ChatGPT and they're doing really well and they're putting up the right things that need to be there for them to show, you also still have to outdo them to have a bite at the apple on ChatGPT. So it still comes down to keeping up with the Joneses, but you're right that AI search can sometimes be a faster result that you get to show and have visibility as long as you have that foundation. So what can an agency do? Kind of talked a little bit about this too, but they should be helping you determine the timeline. You can ask those questions. I think it's really important that you break down these goals in chunks and so that you can have wins along the way since it is a longer timeline for expectations of results. So the first thing is that you should see rankings first. That's how you know that the optimizations are working, is that you maybe were in the 10th place of ranking and now you're in 7. It's not that you're going to be number 1 overnight, but as long as you're seeing yourself move up in rankings, it means that things are working. So the first indication that your money is being spent properly is that you're getting closer to that visibility, to be page 1, to be in the 3 pack, to be on the AEO search, whatever it is, right? To be on the AI search platform. After your ranking, that's when you can start tracking call volume, form fills, live chat fill-ins, conversions, right? But you can't track conversions really, or say you've met a goal or you're close to the goal until you actually have visibility. So you have to think of these things kind of in consecutive order. Rank first, then start seeing what that call tracking looks like. How is that increasing? And finally is when you're going to be tracking your cost per case signed and what's actually coming in terms of like your actual ROI here. I would call cost per case signed the ultimate return on investment KPI, right? But this is hard to do until you actually have about 3 to 6 months of solid data. This is where you're actually going to see where the rubber meets the road with your intake data and your SEO tracking data. So you put those together to get that information. And that isn't easy to do. Sometimes it's manual, but it's important. There should be things like this. It's just a quick visual to show, but like just a timeline. Every SEO agency should have some sort of timeline that shows you deliverables versus expectations. So just kind of looking for those types of things when you're vetting somebody. The last piece, now let's say that you have spent the right budget, that your expectations are in alignment, things are good. Um, how are you tracking? Are you tracking, right? So at the beginning of that relationship, they said we should see you rank, we should see you convert, and we should see that your cost per case sign is lower and lower by the month as you continue getting more visibility, more phone calls, right? Great. But are you seeing that in a month-to-month report? That's extremely important in that I think people take for granted these reports. One, lawyers often get busy and they're not looking at the reports, and it gives an opportunity for an agency, a coach, a whoever to just kind of send a lackluster report with information that does show KPIs, but it isn't super built out. It isn't really showing the things that you need, right? So issues that I commonly see, and you could kind of go take this, do a little audit of your current report. Are you just getting a monthly snapshot, meaning that they're showing you the last 30 days of rankings, of call volume, of anything? The problem with that is that you're not seeing historical data. If I only see what happened this month, how am I supposed to know if I'm doing better or worse? I can compare it to last month or last 3 months or, even the last year or whatever it is. So I don't even understand how people accept a 30-day snapshot and they're like, yeah, this is great because you're not able to understand if you're doing better. No form and call tracking. This happens way more than I expected. I would think that lawyers would demand, clients, any industry would demand that they see the actual conversion data, right? Most companies will put call rail tracking on your website. Call tracking metrics is another company. There's a lot of companies, but they will use some form of this to make sure that they're tracking, did the call come from this page, that page, from your Google business profile, from whatever source, right? And the fact that that's not included is a little telling. One very important piece of having a relationship with an SEO agency is that there's got to be some sort of trust. And so, whether or not your number is high or low that month, you got to show it. You got to be transparent. If it's low, if you've been doing really well for 4 months and then we saw a dip in 1 month, that's really important to talk about on a call so that we can find out, was there something wrong with the intake team? Was your intake person out for a week, right? Or is that something going on the website? We can't diagnose issues, pivot, and be really strategic unless we are looking at this data. So if it's not there, that should be kind of a red flag. You want to see your tracking data. And then basic missing KPIs. Sometimes you'll see that they'll just put like, oh, you're ranking somewhere between page 2 and 5. This is real. I've seen that in some competitor reports. You want to know where you're actually ranking, right? Like, are you in the three pack? Are you not? What does that look like? And so I have a couple of examples of what you might want to be looking for in a report that truly shows what you need to know, right? So here, an example of a side menu of all the things, and you'll have this presentation, so you'll be able to look at this a little bit more. But you want, here you see there's AI overview, so they're tracking on AI rankings. Your intake report has to do with your call rail and your conversions. Needed items, new at Google, new on AI, just keeping up with what's going on, showing you here's the things that we still need from you to make this work. And a quarterly performance you see down there, so it also breaks it down to show more data sets, not just monthly, right? This is an example of an interactive, it doesn't need to be a dashboard. It can be a PDF. That's fine. But being able to see last year's numbers versus this year's numbers or the last 3 months next to it. You can see here you're able to switch up the data time period. That's excellent. That it pulls in real time. Here you'll see last year's data to this year's data and then how that's changed. Calls are an important one that's on there. Forms, it's the things that are being actually tracked, but important is to see the before and after. This is an example of seeing that long term. You're not looking at 1 month, but you're looking at from 2023 to 2026. That's a huge period of time. And you're able to see, when did your site launch? What does this look like? Again, having those ups and downs are not necessarily negative. It is helpful to continue to enhance your strategy and pick up when things are not working or when something is not firing off correctly. So, having all the data, whether it's good or bad, is very important. This would be an example of keyword rankings and expectations. It's showing you exactly what your ranking position is, and it's also showing you your position change. Now, this fluctuates like crazy sometimes. It depends on when you pull the ranking. Some of these things take them with a grain of salt, but at least having a general understanding of where your keywords are is important. Quarterly and year-over-year reporting would be for higher end spend. If you're doing something foundational, I wouldn't, if we talk about expectations, I wouldn't expect this kind of reporting. But if you are spending quite a bit and you're really one of the clients with your agency that's like, yes, give me all the things you have, I want to see myself really crush it. These types of reports and pages should be in there where you're seeing your year over year growth, your quarterly growth. It's also showing you not just the leads that came in, but the number that were calls. And, we do it 30 seconds, first time callers to make sure we're not putting in anything that's like spammy. And then actually the case is signed by month. So really showing that in-depth information. And then local is a whole different ball game. With local SEO, where you're in that 3-pack on Google, it's making sure you're breaking it down by each location, that you're able to see the data from each of your locations so that you can say, oh, this location has not been doing well for the last 3 months. Maybe we need to focus on that. Or this location has really done well in the last couple of months. What are we doing there? Right? Again, if you don't have data, how are you spending your money wisely? How are you reallocating that budget to what works and doesn't work? Again, this is that quarter over quarter long-term tracking, but all of this is to say that you want that depth of knowledge and transparency from your agency. It's possible to create this. There's this things called geogrids that many of you have seen in reports or in presentations, but being able to see those geogrids in real time and over time is again that transparency. So here you can see that this is a live link. This exists. This can be sent by your company to you. And then you can see from June 6, 2024, all the way till, February, whatever month, you can keep scrolling, but it'll show you every time they took that snapshot. So you can see growth, or you can see, hey, it didn't work, right? Or why isn't it working? So again, transparency over time. And then with reviews, even the level of your reporting and what a company can do for you is really up to you asking, making sure you're getting everything. But when it comes to local and conversion, you can be in that 3-pack, but if you don't have the right number of reviews and you don't look good next to the other two competitors, people aren't going to click the call button. So it's important to get that review count up. This is a way to show like agencies could be helping you in that respect, where they're showing you month over month how many reviews have you gotten and how many reviews do the competitors have, right? What are you trying to beat? What or how many should you get on this location versus that location? And so those are tools and things above and beyond, but things that you should be looking for if you really want to crush it. We did the poll already. We were able to put all 2 questions there. We're a little bit early on time, so if there are questions anybody has, we're happy to answer those questions for you. Otherwise, these QR codes here will get you guys a free audit, or the book from Jayden, as he mentioned. I don't know, Jayden, if you have anything else to add about this QR code, but feel free to leave us with some thoughts that you
I
have.
think this was a great collab. I'm so glad we got this on the books, and I really hope that people took the knowledge that we gave them today and are going to implement it. If I could give a takeaway from my side, I would say that takeaway would be to get change the structure of your money in your firm. So and put more time into reviewing your reports, both your financial reports as well as your marketing reports. And be involved. Put it on your calendar. Put it every month, put that
Lock
hour
it.
block on your calendar as to when you are going to review this and maybe even get your leadership team involved with that as well. So that you're not just looking, a lot of times people avoid it because they look at it and they feel a negative emotion and they don't look at it again. Well, when you have a team, a leadership team, or even if it's just the operations manager or your executive assistant, you can have that back and forth conversation and have and discuss ideas so that you can have more of the results that you want.
I agree. And that was one of the biggest hacks that I've heard from lawyers and anybody, quite frankly, anybody, with getting stuff really done and doing the focus time, the blocks on your calendar. I think that goes a long way. And it's not even saying you have to do it weekly. It could be bi-week, it could be twice a month, it could be once a month, but like just carving out the time
Mm-hmm.
and starting somewhere. Um, so for those of you who said yes, that you were interested in hearing from Jayden or myself, someone or one of us will be in touch with you shortly. Again, we really appreciate you guys joining us. I would just echo what you said, Jaden. It's just being mindful and kind of taking the time to look into these things and how you spend that money at the beginning and what kind of relationship you get into is a big deal for what your growth looks like as a firm. So, don't jump into decisions and take the time to actually audit and look at the things that experts are telling you to look at, right? To make those better
Yep.
choices for yourself. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Jaden. I really appreciate it. And I think we'll take some of this content that was really good crossover and maybe we'll put together a one page or something, put that out on social, give more helpful advice for people who are blocking their calendar and saving these things and
Mm-hmm.
actually want to help themselves with it.
I love that.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.